Hello everyone, Gabby Turner here, and welcome to Astro Hi-Fi. Today I'm going to be talking about the ingress chart of Saturn and Neptune when they make their conjunction at 0 degrees of Aries in February 2026. So when they are together making that ingress, basically, I mean, they don't exactly ingress at the same time, I guess, technically, but they're going to be meeting up at 0 degrees and I think 45 minutes. I've got the ingress chart on my thumbnail there, and it's just interesting to look at the chart for that moment because it's going to tell us more. We can just think about Saturn and Neptune in the sign of Aries and what these two planetary energies are going to bring. We can think of it that way. But we can cast a chart for any moment, and the holistic view of the chart also tells us a lot about what this moment means. What this major astrological transit. I mean, astrologers are always going on about, oh, it's the blah blah blah. This is such a rare astrological transit. Well, we're talking about Saturn and Neptune, two of the outer planets, making a conjunction at the very beginning of the zodiac, 0 degrees of Aries. And I don't know, I think this is going to be like pretty huge. I know that in the last several years we've all been through kind of a lot. Like, the world has changed so dramatically over the last few years, and I think that there's some sort of even bigger significant shift that's going to be happening with this transit, and I really don't think that it's going to be an easy one. But one of the things that astrology can help us do, whether we're looking at our own transits to our own individual natal charts or what have you, is that we can use this symbolic language of astrology to help us sort of decode and understand what we are experiencing and to prepare for what we might be experiencing in the future. So what do I want to say first of all? I guess the first thing that I note with this, so we have Saturn and Neptune at 0 degrees Aries. I have at least one other video on this transit because I'm a little bit like preoccupied with it. It's a pretty fascinating transit from my perspective, but so you can look at some of those if you're equally kind of captivated by it. Saturn and Neptune are going to be actually sextiling the other two major outer planets, like the quote-unquote modern planets, right? Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto are the modern planets. They're not the classical planets that have been known for I don't know, thousands of years, but they were discovered in modern times. So Saturn and Neptune at 0 Aries are going to be sextiling Pluto, which I think is going to be at 4 degrees of Aquarius when this takes place in 2026, but early degrees of Aquarius, we'll say. And then also making a sextile to Uranus, which is going to be at 27 degrees of Taurus, so late degrees of Taurus, still forming a sextile. And I just want to point out as well that the fixed star Caput Algol, which is a very monstrous fixed star. I don't know if it's the worst, but it's one of the worst fixed stars. For people who like to look into the significance of fixed star conjunctions and things like that, Uranus at 27 degrees is going to be in a partile conjunction. I mean, partile just means a degree or less away from Caput Algol, which currently is at 26 degrees and however many minutes of Taurus. Now, that is significant. So we have Saturn, Neptune making these sextiles. These are harmonious aspects to the other, furthest out planets, Uranus and Pluto. Well, that in and of itself is sort of whatever this Saturn-Neptune cycle that's beginning, like a total reset for us, resetting the timer. How when you pull back a timer, you dial it all the way back. really preparing us for something tremendous. That when we say outer planets, we would include Saturn and Jupiter in that, but I'm saying like the outer planets here, like the modern planets, especially so help us to transcend our own little corner of the universe here, our own little planet, our own little solar system. They, especially Neptune, really help us to see that there is some sort of great beyond, right? Neptune, in and of itself, helps us to pierce the veil supernaturally, psychically. It helps us to connect to and understand the divine, something that's not concrete in nature, which is what Saturn represents actually, but that is more expansive. And Uranus helps us to achieve the technology of futurism that will likely someday allow us to travel throughout the universe in some capacity. And Pluto has to do with many things, death and rebirth. It's, when we go through major transformations in life, the old ways die off. So, for example, the last time that Neptune was in the sign of Aries was the late 1800s, when electricity was emerging, and we take it for granted today, right? Like, we're constantly powering up our phones or whatever. Like, just if we want some light, we flip on a switch. We don't even think about it. But in the late 1800s, this was like a whole new world. A whole new world, right? Whole new world. We had this phrase, gilded cities, where, electricity was emerging in cities and they were lit up at night and people could stay up late when normally they had to go to bed, because like you couldn't see unless you had candles, and then you still couldn't see very well, right? So, and also telephones. Isn't that crazy? Like, let's see how far we've come since the last time Neptune was in Aries. Telephones were just being invented in the late 1800s. And now what do we have? Like, we're walking around with these like magic wands, these smartphones that we have. But, so yeah, I mean, Neptune, Saturn are making contacts to Pluto and Uranus, like these major planets of like transformation and overhaul and, huge steps in evolution. That's what Pluto also has to do with. Like, we're going to have to evolve tremendously, right? Basically just to survive, aren't we? And that's what the sign of Aries is also about. It is the sign of survival. It's our fight or flight response. So I do want to say something about Saturn in Aries, because this is not a sign where Saturn is well placed. It's exalted in the opposite sign, Libra, because Saturn has to do with karma, and karma is about balance, right? So is Libra. Libra is about balance. It's about the type of justice known as fairness. Ultimately life seems like it's not very fair, right? But Saturn, when it's in the sign of Libra, it can create the greatest sense of fairness and balance, and really balance out that karmic score sheet, I guess. So it's exalted in Libra, which means that it's in its fall when it's in the sign of Aries. Saturn is a planet that likes to look at the long-term picture. It, like when you think about long-term planning, developing plans that may take years to put into effect. That's what Saturn likes to do, and it likes to establish things that last for years. Well, you're in a sign of Aries that's about immediate needs and drives and impulses. Again, the fight or flight response. If you're in a situation that is fight or flight, you are not going to be thinking about your 10-year plan. You're going to be thinking like, how do I cope with this situation in front of me? In fact, you may not be thinking very much at all, because you're going to be needing to act on impulse. So it is a difficult placement for Saturn. It's not a very, with the modern planets, there's not a lot of information out there about where they're exalted or where they're in detriment or fall, etc. I mean, we do have a sort of common agreement as astrologers about which signs they rule. Neptune rules the sign of Pisces, which is just coming out of when this happens, right? Uranus rules the sign of Aquarius. Pluto rules the sign of Scorpio. So we understand their rulerships, but I guess we haven't come to a point of agreement necessarily about where these planets are exalted. There have been some notions put out there, but they haven't stuck strongly in the collective astrological knowledge base as of yet, as far as I can tell. If you think I'm wrong about that, let me know. I have seen some strong, like Uranus is supposed to be exalted in Scorpio, for example. Makes sense to me. Some people say that Neptune is exalted in Aquarius. Some people say it's exalted in Leo, which are signs that are opposite to each other. So that's interesting because whichever sign Neptune is exalted in, it's going to be in its fall in the opposite sign. So that's funny, just in the way that that works, that those are the two options that people are presenting. But you know, one of the things that points out is that even when a planet like Saturn is in its fall, such as when it's in the sign of Aries, there's something interesting about that because the planet is really challenged. You know, what the planet wants to do, build, you know, use sustained effort, persistence, determination, create things that are sustainable, that are lasting structures, ingrained structures, right? That last for generations. You know, how does Saturn manage to do that? It's a big challenge for Saturn. Saturn, ironically, though, loves challenges. That's what it's known for. It loves to meet a good challenge. But in this case, the challenge is, you know, how can I create something like that or approach life like that when I'm in a survival mode type of experience, or when my impulses have gotten the best of me? You know, what do I do in those types of situations? I don't know. So in any case, I have talked more about Saturn and Neptune, their cycle in and of itself, which I will just mention again here briefly for anyone who didn't hear me say that before. These planets do correspond, for example, you know, in their cycle when they make conjunctions and squares, etc., to each other as they're going around. I had to scratch my nose there. I didn't want you to watch it. They do seem to correspond with significant changes in the USSR / Russia, and I don't know. I mean, it's just something to think about because clearly there is a lot going on with Russia at the moment, as it's, you know, currently in a war with the Ukraine. You know, Russia genuinely seems to be very much trying to establish, that's a Saturnian impulse, establish itself more globally and get respect. This is also something that Saturn wants. It's that drive for respect. I deserve to be respected. I deserve to be seen as a person of significance, an elder, right? Respect your elders. You know that with Vladimir Putin, he is very much pushing for the Western world to acknowledge Russia more as an equal on the world stage. And that's part of his motivation right now, and also to expand his borders, which most nations are not capable of doing, even though throughout human history this has been a large, you know, this has been the basis of imperialism. Saturn and Aries, too, does kind of speak to that imperialism, right? Because you have the warrior nature of Aries, like being unafraid to go to fight, to go to war, in order to create something that is established, or to further an already established empire or something like that. Neptune also has a tendency to dissolve things like borders and boundaries and create an expansion sort of in that way through dissolving borders and boundaries that previously existed. So I'm not making a specific prediction here, but I think it's quite possible that there could be some significant shift in how Russia is perceived on the world stage. I mean, we've already seen that even building up to this conjunction, you know, but I think that we're going to see a lot of hardship. You know, Neptune, as it's been going through Pisces, it's encouraged us to be more compassionate, to, you know, kind of put ourselves in other people's shoes. And when it goes into Aries, again, we have this, you know, like Neptune, which is normally about, you know, seeing our cohesiveness, seeing our sense of unity. It's in a sign that's all about the individual and like having to put the individual needs first. You know, needing to make sacrifices so that I can do what I need. It's like really like putting the mask on yourself first. It's not that people will lose all sense of compassion when Neptune goes into Aries, but it's like, I need to take care of myself. I need to make sacrifices on behalf of myself so that I can go the distance. There's also going to be a square aspect that's applying between Mars in Aquarius. As the Saturn-Neptune conjunction takes place, Mars will be in late Aquarius, applying to a square to Uranus and Taurus. So again, this could be like some sort of use of force via technological means. Mars and Aquarius, I mean, that could be cyber attacks. It could just be advanced weaponry of some kind, because Aquarius has to do with, you know, technology, futurism. It could be the use of some sort of weaponry that is extremely advanced, I don't know, beyond what is known. It's also making a square to Uranus. Uranus, of course, is the ruler of Aquarius, and Uranus also has to do with technology, change, chaos. And Uranus has really been tearing it up throughout its entire transit in the sign of Taurus. And I can't remember exactly what year Uranus entered Taurus, but like I'm ready for it to get out of the sign of Taurus personally. It will, like I said before, be at 27 degrees of Taurus when this takes place. But we're having a square between Mars and Uranus. Like Mars in Aquarius, you know, wants to use technology as a means of force in some way. It wants to use collective groups and networks as well in order to push forward a personal agenda. But it's in a square to Uranus and Taurus. So it's, to me, it's like, you know, that there's a friction that's created there, because if such a use of force is made, then Uranus itself will have to be very adaptable and also create just more. It seems to me like a little bit of a ping pong effect, where something very dramatic use of technological force creates a really strong chaotic tidal wave. You know, when Uranus, many people consider Uranus to be in its fall in the sign of Taurus, because they see it being exalted in the sign of Scorpio. It kind of makes sense to me here, because Uranus being all about chaos and change, Taurus is a sign of stability. And we have, can you remember a time when there has been less stability in the world than what we've been experiencing during this Uranus in Taurus transit? Right? Because Uranus is like, so many things are just changing and changing. There's so much chaos. You know, what was the quote-unquote norm, what was accepted, you know, without question a couple of years ago, now it's, you know, looked at totally differently. Our perspectives have changed. Everything has changed so dramatically. And it doesn't allow us very easily to have that Taurian sense of stability. Now Mars is going to be activating that via this square, Mars in Aquarius squaring Uranus and Taurus, and I just feel like it's going to be like this, something is going to happen which is really going to create even more upheaval and an even greater sense of like, wow, where is my stability? I cannot feel rooted. I'm having trouble like feeling that I have what I need materially speaking. You know, and in addition to that, like I mentioned earlier, Uranus is going to be conjunct the fixed star Caput Algol. And Caput Algol is a fixed star that's associated with the energy of Medusa. So Medusa was this, she was, I don't know if she was originally a goddess. I think she was, but she pissed off another goddess. And then that goddess transformed her into this gorgon with these snake-like hair. And if you looked at her, you would turn to stone. Well, that's one way to get stability, I guess. Look at a monster and then get turned to stone. That's, I guess you're stable then, but nobody wants to be turned to stone, right? And the only way to defeat her was to hold up a mirror and have her look at herself. So there's a lot here with Caput Algol about, I just want to give an example of this, and this is with much love to both Johnny Depp, who is from my home state of Kentucky, and to Amber Heard, you know, because trauma is tough. Dysfunctional relationships, nobody wants to have to experience that. And especially on the whole world stage. But he was experiencing a lot. He has some natal conjunctions near Caput Algol, I believe, Mercury maybe. But in any case, he was having some strong transits to that area of his chart. As the defamation trial that he went through. And, you know, I'm just trying to point out what the energy of Caput Algol is. It's sort of like this train wreck that you can't help but look at. You know, like you know that you shouldn't look at it, but you feel captivated by this sort of train wreck, monstrous train wreck energy. It's like, you know, you shouldn't look at Medusa. You're kind of like, I need to look at Medusa because like she's scary and I need to know if she's coming at me or whatever. But it's like, you know, what that strange like catch-22 of like, it's better for me not to look. I'm safer if I don't look. But there's something in me that feels like I'll find my safety through looking. But there's a need here for like self-reflection. Should we be looking at Medusa and seeing her as the monstrous person? Or should we be like more focused on ourselves and allow Medusa to look at herself, right? Some sort of instability happening in the world with this Uranus conjunct Caput Algol that is going to need us all to self-reflect quite a bit. There might be a tendency to want to find someone to blame it all on, someone to be the scapegoat. Oh, you're the Medusa, you're the bad person. You caused all of this. But in some way, we all are, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, it's like, you know, just like what Neptune, the planet Neptune, who's going to be sextiling Uranus, is trying to get us to understand. We are unity, you know. I've been in my 90s vibe lately, and there was a singer in the 90s, India Aries, and she has a lyric, I think I'm getting it correctly, I don't know where you begin, and I don't know where I end. You know, that's the nature of Neptune, like understanding that we're kind of all in it together. What affects one of us affects all of us. And we're all complicit, I will say. In some way, vibrationally, at the very least, we're all sort of complicit in what this increased level of instability is that will be taking place as a result of this Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees Aries, the very beginning of the zodiac. And that's also the part of it that is just like blowing my mind. It's like, okay, this is important. This is important, you know, like, you know, it's like, I don't know, like the chances out of all 360 degrees for it to be occurring at the 0 degree of Aries, it's just, it's pretty notable. Um, and the other thing that I noticed in this chart, though, is that there is a yod aspect going to the south node. So when this takes place, the south node will be in mid Virgo. The north node will be in mid Pisces, which of course is Neptune's sign that it rules. And it'll be what's called a boomerang yod. So the yod is going to be formed from Saturn, Neptune, making a sextile to Pluto and Aquarius. And then those 2 points that are sextile to each other are both making an inconjunct aspect to this south node in Virgo. So what does that mean? And then it's a boomerang because the north node on the other side of it creates a boomerang effect. So the nodes, which are all about like, what are we being called to do? Like, where is our point of growth? How do we sort of steer our ship in the direction that we're supposed to steer it in? We have to rely on that south node, which is, you know, giving us fuel. It's, you know, it's what is easier for us, what we might want to lean back on. It's a sort of comfort zone in a way, the south node, but the north node is what we need to sort of lean more into. So, but there's a yod aspect pointing to the south node. So it's like there's a particular significance of the sign of Virgo and how we apply ourselves in Virgoan ways to help us correct. You know, that's one of the things that Virgo likes to do. Let's correct, let's fix, let's make things more effective. Let's be helpful, let's be of service. Those are things that are going to really be required of us as a result of whatever is happening in the world with this Saturn-Neptune conjunction. I personally think that Chiron is the modern ruler of Virgo. So in classic astrology, Mercury rules both Virgo and Gemini. And most astrologers still take the classic astrologers, like, you know, Jupiter is still seen as one of the rulers of Pisces, for example, but the modern ruler is Neptune. But in any case, I just feel like there's a case to be made for Chiron to be the modern ruler of Virgo. And what do we learn about Chiron? Chiron is the centaur. It's I guess it's called a centaur planet in terms of the celestial body itself, but it was named for the mythological centaur Chiron, who had this wound. It was an incurable wound, which is a sort of Virgo thing. Not that Virgos are necessarily about wounds, but they're about fixing things that you have to come back to time and again, like doing the laundry, right? Fixing the car. Like, you fix the car, but like, it's not going to say fix forever. You change the oil, you're going to have to do it again. It's about the things that have to be repeated because we never exactly get to a point of perfection, but Virgo still has that drive for perfection, right? Chiron likewise sought the perfection of the complete healing of his wound. He was never able to get there. But through continued application of attempting to heal his wounds, he made so many strides, and he, became a master healer. He became a master healer of healing modalities that already existed. He also created and implemented new healing modalities, and he was able to be of service to others as a healer. Virgo likewise, whether it's healing specifically, Virgo is a sign where we like to be able to give back in practical ways. Whereas the opposite sign, Pisces, is like we like to be able to sacrifice and help other people, but in maybe more spiritual, ephemeral ways. Like Pisces would be like, if you're going through a hard time, I'll pray for you. Virgo is like, hey, if you need to move, I'll help you move, right? Virgo is very helpful and of service. So I just think, like, with whatever's happening with this Saturn-Neptune conjunction, we're really being called upon to, like, be there for each other, basically. Like, we need to show up for each other. We need to take whatever we've learned in life through having to try to fix our own lives. Whatever our skill set is, we're going to be called to sort of offer that of service to the world in some way. How can I be of help to others? And the last thing that I noticed in this chart is that Venus in Pisces is going to be in a trine aspect to Jupiter in Cancer. Now, Venus, as the ruler of Taurus, cares about material things and the enjoyment of life in a material way. She also, as the ruler of Libra, cares about relationships and how we enjoy our social connections to others and how we can, be more understanding of others. But when she's in the sign of Neptune, where I believe Venus is actually exalted, talking a lot about exaltations today, Venus understands that, like, there's a greater love. There's something that's more transcendent than just partnership. There's something more transcendent than having a cushy lifestyle. It's making me think of, like, Beatles songs, like, love is all there is. It's like that transcendent sense of love. And it's going to be in a trine aspect to Jupiter in Cancer, which is, expanding upon our ability to actually feel emotionally safe and secure, and that we have a group, like we have some sort of cohesive sense of I belong. So we're going to be able, through this, it really makes me think of, like, how the human spirit, just this whole chart for this Saturn-Neptune transit, makes me think about how the human spirit really shines the brightest in our greatest moments of adversity. Do we want to experience those moments of adversity? No, we don't, but it helps us to really understand who we really are as humans as well, and what really matters. What really matters. All right, so let me know what you're thinking about this transit in the comments below, or any other feedback you have. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.